15 police dogs surround an ex-convict at the airport. What happened next shocked everyone. The barking started like thunder. Marcus Rivera froze mid-step at gate 47, his worn duffel bag slipping from his shoulder. 15 police dogs, German Shepherds, Malinois, bloodhounds, broke from their demonstration formation and charged straight toward him, their handlers shouting commands that went completely ignored. Passengers screamed. Children cried. Security radios crackled with panic. Marcus, 42, had been out of prison for exactly 8 months. 8 months of keeping his head down, following every rule, reporting to his parole officer weekly. He'd finally saved enough from his warehouse job to visit his dying sister in Seattle. One plane ticket. One chance to say goodbye. And now this. The dogs formed a tight circle around him, not barking anymore, just staring, bodies tense, eyes locked on his bag. Rex, the lead German Shepherd, pushed his nose against the duffel, whining softly. "Don't move." Officer Sarah Chen barked, her hand hovering near her weapon. "Put the bag down slowly." Marcus's hands trembled. He knew how this looked. Ex-convict. Airport. Dogs going crazy. He'd seen enough interrogations to know where this ended. Cuffs, searches, missed flights, violated parole. "It's just clothes," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his veins. "And something for my sister." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Then you won't mind showing us." Marcus knelt, unzipping the bag with deliberate slowness. Inside, 2 shirts, jeans, toiletries, and a small wooden box wrapped in a faded blue blanket. Rex lunged forward, pressing his entire body against that box, his tail wagging frantically now. Not aggression. Recognition. Chen reached for the box. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Please be careful with that." She lifted it, and her expression shifted. On the lid, burned into the wood, were the words, K9 Unit 47, Officer David Chen, in memoriam. Sarah Chen's breath caught. David Chen was my brother. The airport noise faded. Marcus looked up at her, and for the first time in years, someone saw past the prison record to the man underneath. "I know," he said. "He saved my life. And I've been trying to return something that belongs to him." If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about second chances. The wooden box sat on the metal security table between them like evidence at a trial. Sarah Chen stared at her brother's name burned into the wood, her jaw tight, eyes unreadable. "How did you get this?" Her voice was cold, controlled. The kind of control that came from years of training to never show weakness. Marcus stood perfectly still, hands visible, shoulders slightly lowered, body language he'd learned the hard way. Non-threatening. Compliant. "Your brother pulled me over 7 years ago. I was high, driving stolen property, destroying my life one bad choice at a time." The other officers had gathered now, forming a loose semicircle around them. Rex remained pressed against Marcus's leg, tail still wagging, completely ignoring his handler's commands to heel. "He could have arrested me," Marcus continued quietly. "Should have. Instead, he drove me to a rehab center, waited 3 hours until they had a bed, and told me something I'll never forget." He paused, meeting Sarah's eyes. He said, "Your past doesn't own your future unless you let it." Sarah's expression didn't change, but her hand moved away from her weapon. "My brother died 2 years ago. Ambushed during a traffic stop." Her voice cracked slightly on the word, ambush. "So I'll ask you again, how did you get his memorial box?" "I made it," Marcus said. "In the prison woodshop. Took me 14 months to get approved for materials, another 8 to finish it. I carved every letter myself." "Why?" "Because he gave me a second chance when no one else would. Because 3 months after he dropped me at that rehab, I got a letter from him checking if I was still clean." Marcus's voice wavered. "Because when I relapsed and ended up in county jail, he visited me. Told me falling down didn't mean I had to stay down." One of the younger officers scoffed. "Touching story, but that doesn't explain why you're carrying it through airport security." Marcus turned to him. "Officer David Chen died before I could thank him properly. I was still inside when it happened. By the time I got out, his family had moved, and the memorial service was long over." He looked back at Sarah. I tracked down every K-9 handler who worked with your brother. They told me you were transferring to Seattle. This box belongs with his family, not sitting on a shelf in my apartment." Sarah picked up the box, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside, wrapped in protective cloth, was a hand-carved replica of a police K-9 badge, and beneath it, a letter sealed in plastic. "What's this?" she demanded. "Everything I wanted to say to him but never got the chance. And something else he needs you to know." Sarah pulled the letter out, and her face went pale as she read the first line. Her eyes snapped up to Marcus. "This says you have proof the ambush wasn't random. That someone in the department set him up." The airport seemed to hold its breath. Marcus nodded slowly. "Your brother didn't just help addicts and ex-cons. He documented corruption. 3 weeks before he died, he sent me a flash drive for safekeeping. Said if anything happened to him, I should get it to someone he trusted." He reached slowly into his jacket pocket, and every officer's hand moved to their weapons. "Easy. It's just this." He produced a small evidence bag containing a USB drive. "I tried going through official channels, filed reports, made calls. But the detectives assigned to your brother's case kept stonewalling me. One even threatened to violate my parole if I kept asking questions." His voice hardened. "So I decided to deliver it myself. Directly to the only person David Chen said would know what to do with it." Sarah stared at the drive like it was a live grenade. "Why should I believe you? You're a convicted felon carrying unverified evidence." "Because Rex believes me," Marcus said simply, gesturing to the dog still pressed against his leg. "And because your brother trained these dogs to recognize one thing above all else, loyalty." The dog whined softly, and for the first time since she'd drawn her weapon, Sarah Chen looked uncertain. Not like an officer confronting a suspect, but like a sister who'd just been handed her brother's ghost. "If you're lying to me, then arrest me right here," Marcus interrupted. "I've got nothing left to lose except the promise I made to a good man. But if I'm telling the truth..." He met her eyes. "Then your brother's last case isn't closed. And whoever killed him is still out there." Sarah Chen led Marcus to a private airport security office, away from the crowd of gawking passengers and nervous officers. Rex followed without being commanded, his body still pressed protectively against Marcus's side. Inside, she plugged the USB drive into an isolated laptop, one not connected to any network. Standard protocol for examining potential evidence from unknown sources. The screen flickered to life. Folders upon folders of files. Audio recordings. Photographs. Spreadsheets tracking dates, times, and badge numbers. Sarah's hands hovered over the keyboard. "Before I open this, I need to know something. Why didn't you just mail this to me?" Marcus leaned against the wall, exhaustion creeping into his voice. "Because your brother told me something 3 days before he died. He called me from a blocked number, said he couldn't talk long. Told me if anything happened to him, I couldn't trust anyone in his department. Not his captain, not internal affairs, not even his partner." He paused. "He said the only person he trusted completely was his sister in narcotics. The one who never compromised, never looked the other way." Sarah's jaw tightened. She clicked on the first audio file. Her brother's voice filled the room, steady and clear. "This is Officer David Chen, badge 4729, recording 47. Date, March 12th. I've confirmed that Sergeant Frank Morrison has been running protection for the Valdez distribution network for at least 18 months. Tonight I witnessed him personally warn Carlos Valdez about an incoming DEA raid. The raid was compromised. 3 agents nearly died." Sarah's face went pale. Morrison was David's patrol supervisor. He gave the eulogy at his funeral. Marcus nodded grimly. "Keep listening." The recordings continued. David Chen had spent 2 years documenting a corruption network that reached deep into the department. Protection rackets. Evidence tampering. Witness intimidation. And at the center of it all, Sergeant Frank Morrison and Lieutenant James Webb, who now served as the department's head of internal affairs. "Webb's in charge of investigating corruption," Sarah whispered, her voice hollow. "He's been blocking every inquiry into my brother's death." "Because he ordered it," Marcus said quietly. There's a recording dated 2 days before your brother was killed. David called me, said he was going to turn over everything he had. He'd arranged a meeting with a federal prosecutor. Morrison and Webb found out. Sarah scrolled through the files with shaking hands. Photographs of Morrison meeting with known criminals. Bank records showing deposits that matched dates when evidence mysteriously disappeared from the evidence room. Text messages planning David's traffic stop down to the minute. They set up the ambush, she breathed. They murdered my brother. And they've been covering it up ever since, Marcus added. Every detective assigned to the case has either been on Morrison's payroll or too scared to dig deeper. Your brother knew he was running out of time. That's why he gave me the drive. Said an ex-con with nothing to lose was safer than any cop still on the force. Sarah stood abruptly, pacing the small room like a caged animal. This is enough to bring them down. Federal charges. RICO violations. Conspiracy to commit murder. She turned to Marcus. But if we move too fast, they'll destroy evidence. They have access to everything. Computers, records, witnesses. Your brother thought of that too, Marcus said. He pulled out his phone, showing her a series of encrypted contacts. Before he died, he connected me with 3 people. A federal prosecutor who specializes in police corruption. A forensic accountant who's been quietly building a parallel case. And a retired FBI agent who's been waiting 2 years for someone to come forward with solid evidence. Sarah stared at him. You've been coordinating this the whole time? For 8 months. Since the day I got out. Marcus's voice hardened. Your brother saved my life when he had every reason not to. The least I can do is make sure his death means something. A knock on the door made them both freeze. A young officer poked his head in. Officer Chen? There's a Captain Morrison here to see you. Says it's urgent. Sarah's eyes met Marcus's. The color drained from her face. Tell him I'll be right out, she said evenly. The door closed. Sarah turned to Marcus, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. Morrison never comes to the airport. He's based downtown. He knows, Marcus said simply. Someone in that terminal recognized me, or they've been tracking the drive, or there's been a leak somewhere in the chain, Sarah finished. She made a decision. We need to move now. Before he realizes what we have. She pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. I'm sending encrypted files to the federal prosecutor and the FBI contact. If Morrison tries to stop us, at least the evidence will be out there. Marcus watched her work, his heart pounding. After 7 years of planning, of waiting, of carrying his dead friend's burden, it was finally happening. Rex whined softly, ears alert. Through the office window, they could see Sergeant Frank Morrison entering the security checkpoint, his expression cold, his hand resting casually on his weapon. He wasn't alone. 3 officers flanked him, all wearing the same hard expressions. Sarah looked at Marcus. Whatever happens next, stay behind me. And whatever you do, don't run. That's what they're expecting. What are you going to do? She smiled, and for the first time, Marcus saw her brother's fearlessness reflected in her face. I'm going to give Frank Morrison exactly what he deserves, a front row seat to his own destruction. Sergeant Frank Morrison walked through the security checkpoint like he owned it. His badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights, his expression the perfect mask of concerned authority. Officer Chen, he called out warmly, approaching the office where Sarah and Marcus waited. I heard there was an incident with the K9 demonstration. Wanted to make sure you were handling things appropriately. Sarah stepped out, closing the door behind her, keeping Marcus hidden from view. Everything's under control, Sergeant. Just a false alarm with the dogs. Morrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. Good to hear. Although I did receive a call that you were questioning a known felon. Marcus Rivera, correct? He glanced past her. That's quite a coincidence, given his connection to David. No coincidence, Sarah said evenly. He came to deliver something David wanted me to have. Morrison's hand moved subtly toward his weapon. And what would that be? A memorial box. Very touching. She paused, watching his face carefully. Strange though. Rivera claims my brother was investigating corruption before he died. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. Morrison's 3 backup officers spread out slightly, blocking exits. "Your brother's death was thoroughly investigated," Morrison said, his voice hardening. "Tragic, but straightforward. Wrong place, wrong time. Bringing up conspiracy theories won't change that." "You're right," Sarah agreed. "Which is why I didn't bring it up. Rivera did." Morrison's jaw tightened. Then maybe Rivera needs to be questioned more thoroughly. Parolees are notorious for making false allegations against law enforcement. In fact, I think we should take him in for... For what? Sarah interrupted. "Carrying a wooden box through airport security? That's not a crime, Sergeant. For violating his parole conditions. I'm sure we'll find something." Morrison stepped forward. "Now step aside, Chen. That's an order." Sarah didn't move. Behind her, the office door opened. Marcus emerged, Rex at his side, and the wooden box in his hands. But now the box was open, revealing not just the carved badge, but a small recording device that had been running the entire time. Morrison's face went white. "Officer Sarah Chen, recording 48, Sarah said clearly, her voice steady and official. "Sergeant Frank Morrison just attempted to abuse his authority to detain a witness in an ongoing federal investigation. He also made threatening statements that corroborate allegations of corruption outlined in evidence provided by Officer David Chen." Morrison lunged forward, but Sarah was faster. In one smooth motion, she drew her weapon and stepped between him and Marcus. "Don't." The 3 backup officers froze, uncertain. They'd come expecting to handle a routine situation, not watch their supervisor get caught in the act. "You're making a mistake," Morrison hissed. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. No idea who's involved. Your brother learned that lesson the hard way." "You just confessed," Marcus said quietly. "The recorder's been running since you walked in. And in case you're thinking about destroying evidence," he held up his phone, "it's already streaming to 3 different federal agencies." Morrison's expression transformed from anger to something close to panic. "You can't prove anything. That recording is inadmissible. I'll have it thrown out. I'll have both of you." Sergeant Frank Morrison, a new voice cut through the chaos. Everyone turned. A woman in a dark suit stood at the checkpoint entrance, FBI credentials in hand. Behind her, 6 federal agents in tactical gear moved into position. "I'm Special Agent Rachel Torres, FBI Public Corruption Task Force. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and racketeering under the RICO statute." She looked past him to Sarah. "Officer Chen, we received your encrypted files 20 minutes ago. We've been on our way since then." Morrison tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Rex, responding to some primal sense of justice, moved to block his path. The sergeant stumbled, and federal agents were on him in seconds, slamming him against the wall, cuffing his hands behind his back. "Lieutenant Webb," Morrison shouted desperately as they hauled him upright. "He'll fix this. He always." "Lieutenant James Webb was arrested 45 minutes ago," Agent Torres said coldly. "Along with 4 other officers in your network. We've been building this case for 2 years. The evidence Officer David Chen collected gave us everything we needed for simultaneous arrests. No warnings. No leaks. No escape." Sarah lowered her weapon, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "My brother. Did he know? About the FBI investigation?" Torres nodded. "He was our confidential informant. One of the best we've ever worked with. When he was killed, we thought the case died with him. But then 8 months ago, Marcus Rivera contacted us through David's encrypted channels." She looked at Marcus with something close to respect. "You've been our intermediary this whole time. Coordinating evidence drops, witness protection, timeline coordination." Marcus met Sarah's stunned gaze. "Your brother didn't just save my life. He recruited me. Said someone on the outside, someone the corrupt cops wouldn't suspect, could move more freely than any agent." Morrison struggled against his restraints, fury distorting his features. "You're a felon. A nobody. Your testimony won't." "My testimony is backed by 2 years of documented evidence," Marcus interrupted. "Bank records. Wiretaps. Surveillance footage. And now, your own words on recording, threatening to abuse your authority to silence me. He smiled grimly. Turns out being underestimated is useful. As federal agents led Morrison away, the three backup officers stood frozen, hands raised, realizing too late they'd been on the wrong side of history. Sarah turned to Marcus, emotions warring on her face. You carried this alone for 8 months. Not alone, Marcus corrected, kneeling to scratch Rex behind the ears. Your brother left me instructions. A network. A purpose. He stood, meeting her eyes. He said if I wanted to truly leave my past behind, I had to fight for something bigger than myself. So I did. Agent Torres approached them. We'll need formal statements from both of you. And Marcus, the federal prosecutor, wants to discuss witness protection options. Morrison and Webb's network runs deep. There will be threats. I'm not running, Marcus said simply. I spent 3 years in prison for crimes I committed. I'm not hiding from doing the right thing. Rex barked once, sharp and approving, and despite everything, Sarah Chen smiled through her tears. 6 months later, Marcus Rivera stood in a Seattle courtroom, but this time not as a defendant. He sat in the witness gallery, watching as the last of Morrison's network received their sentences. Sergeant Frank Morrison, 25 years without parole for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. Lieutenant James Webb, 30 years for ordering the assassination of Officer David Chen and running a criminal enterprise within the police department. 7 other officers received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. Their badges, their pensions, their reputations, all stripped away in a cascade of guilty verdicts that had taken 3 months of trials to achieve. Sarah Chen sat beside Marcus, her own uniform now bearing the insignia of a federal task force liaison. The FBI had recruited her immediately after Morrison's arrest, recognizing that her integrity was exactly what they needed to rebuild trust in departments across the country. Your brother would be proud, Marcus said quietly as the judge finished reading the final sentence. Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening. He'd be proud of you too. You could have walked away 8 months ago. Started fresh. Instead, you risked everything. Marcus shrugged. Your brother gave me a chance when I was at my lowest. Carrying his mission forward wasn't a burden. It was an honor. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and questions. The story had become national news. The ex-convict who brought down a corrupt police network, the fallen officer's sister who fought for justice, and the K-9 dog who recognized loyalty even after his handler's death. Agent Torres approached them on the courthouse steps. Marcus, the U.S. attorney wants to meet with you. They're offering a position as a consultant for witness outreach programs, helping other ex-convicts who want to cooperate with law enforcement but don't know how. Marcus blinked, surprised. They want to hire me? With my record? They want to hire you because of your record, Torres corrected. You understand what it's like to be on the other side. That makes you uniquely qualified to build bridges between communities and police departments. She smiled. Plus, you've already proven you're better at undercover work than half our agents. Sarah laughed, the first genuine laugh Marcus had heard from her since this all began. Say yes, Rivera. The criminal justice system needs more people who actually understand redemption. Marcus looked out at the crowd of reporters, activists, and families of Morrison's other victims who had finally received justice. Somewhere in that crowd, he spotted a teenager wearing a hoodie with the words "Second Chances Matter" printed across the front. All right, Marcus said. I'll do it. 3 months later, Marcus stood in front of a classroom at a community center, facing 20 ex-convicts enrolled in a re-entry program. Behind him, a photograph of Officer David Chen hung on the wall, not as a memorial to tragedy, but as a reminder of what one person's belief in redemption could accomplish. My name is Marcus Rivera, he began. 7 years ago, I was high, hopeless, and certain my life was over. Then a police officer who had every reason to give up on me decided I was worth saving. He paused, letting that sink in. Today, I'm here to tell you that your past doesn't define your future unless you let it. And if you want proof, look at what happened when one ex-con decided to honor a fallen officer's legacy instead of running from it. He told them the whole story. The USB drive. The airport confrontation. The moment 15 K9 dogs recognized something worth protecting in a man society had written off. Morrison and Webb are in prison because they believed people like us don't matter, Marcus concluded. They were wrong. Your second chance isn't just about rebuilding your life. It's about proving that redemption is real, that change is possible, and that sometimes the people society discounts are exactly the ones who can make the biggest difference. After class, a young woman approached him. Mr. Rivera? I just finished my parole last month. I want to report corruption in the housing authority, but I'm scared they won't believe me because of my record. Marcus smiled. Let me introduce you to some people who will. That evening, Marcus visited David Chen's grave. Sarah had arranged for a new headstone, one that included not just his years of service, but a simple phrase: he believed in second chances. Rex, now officially retired and living with Sarah, sat beside Marcus at the grave. The old German shepherd rested his head on Marcus's knee, and for a moment, everything felt complete. We did it, Marcus whispered to the headstone. Your network is gone. Your sister is changing the system from the inside. And me. He scratched Rex behind the ears. I finally figured out what you saw in me that night 7 years ago. Not who I was, but who I could become. His phone buzzed. A text from Agent Torres, new case. Witness is scared. Could use your help. Marcus stood, brushing grass from his pants. Duty calls, partner. As he walked toward his car, a modest sedan paid for with his consultant salary, Marcus thought about the wooden box that had started everything. It sat now in Sarah's office at FBI headquarters, a reminder that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can ripple outward in ways no one could predict. 15 police dogs had surrounded him at an airport 6 months ago. The world had assumed he was a threat. But those dogs knew better. They'd recognized something law enforcement should never forget, that loyalty, honor, and redemption don't care about your past. They only care about what you choose to do when given a second chance. And Marcus Rivera had chosen to make his count. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel for more true stories proving that justice isn't about where you've been. It's about what you're willing to fight for when it matters most.